Hello everyone, welcome to Red Snapper. My name's MJ and this is Snap or Pass. Today we're looking at Araña. She's a 1/1, activate, give the next card you play +2 power and move it to the right. In this video we're going to be talking about the Spotlight Cash week that she's in and whether that is any good. We're going to be looking at the mechanics, synergies, I'm going to give you some deck ideas, we'll look at counters, favourable locations and give you all the information you need to determine is it a Snap or Pass, should you buy it. So let's talk about the Spotlight week that she's in first and foremost. So this is 3 Series 5 cards, so in terms of value it's very good. And cards, they're all very good. 3 very good female characters here. We got Ms. Marvel, who I honestly think is probably underplayed at the moment. She puts out a hell of a lot of power for her cost. Her play rate has probably come down a little bit because of Clog, but she puts out so much power for her cost. Honestly, I think if you haven't played her recently or you don't have her, you may be pleasantly surprised. So she's worth a go on her own. And Sage, really a very strong card. Certainly surprised me when she came out. And she's now, she's in some really incredible decks at the moment. So the negative deck is fantastic. And she just, again, she puts out so much power for her cost. All of these cards are good value in terms of the actual power output that they have. So this is a very strong Spotlight week indeed. But let's move on to the mechanics, guys. So Araña, she is an activate card which enables you to trigger the ability on any card that you play. So with some of the previous move trigger cards like Iron Fist and Ghost Spider, there is this requirement that you have to play those cards at a specific time. The great thing about Araña, the incredible thing about her, is you can play her down and then it just sets you up for the rest of the game, and then you can choose to use that ability on whichever card you play. The activate ability triggers in play order, so that means you can play some cards or move some cards and then activate the ability, and then the next card you play, that is the one that gets affected by Araña, which is so good. Actually, one thing that isn't a mechanic, one thing I want to note is that in this video, I've slightly improved or increased the contrast and strength of the yellows on her card just because I thought it made it pop a bit, but that's not actually what it looks like, so apologies. Anyway, back to the mechanics. The power is added first and then the movement happens. This is extremely crucial, of course, especially when you're talking about cards like Human Torch and Multiple Man. Those are going to be 2 of her key synergies. Human Torch is absolutely ridiculous. You play Araña on turn 1, then you activate her ability on turn 2 and you play Human Torch. Human Torch goes up to a 4 and then moves, so becomes an 8. Absolutely ridiculous. And if you do that with Multiple Man of course becomes a 5 and then moves, so you've created 10 power in that turn, which is just crazy. And then later in the game you could maybe go on to play things like Hulkbuster or Symbiote Spider-Man, merge with the Multiple Man, and then you've got this absolute spiciness, and then maybe you could bounce it, or you can move it with the other triggers, blah, 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 blah. Absolute madness. You can manipulate the movement that Araña creates by blocking locations or playing the card to the right location. So what I mean by that is, you may not always want to actually move the card that you're activating the ability of Araña on. Of course, oftentimes you probably will do, and she is a move card primarily, so she's going to work best in move decks, and so as such you are almost always going to want to move. But you do have the ability to prevent that move, so playing in the right location is obviously the most simple and straightforward way to prevent that move. That obviously has its own specific benefits, or restrictions I should say, because it forces you to play in the right if you don't want to move it. So for example, you might not want to get the card into Shang-Chi range, that might be one reason. But the other thing you can do is block a location. So for example, if you block the middle location and play the card on the left and have that ability activated, it's not going to be able to move to the middle, so it'll still get the +2, but it won't move. And it's the first card in the game which explicitly moves to the right. Of course, there are cards which can move to the right, like Ghost Spider, but this is the first one that is specifically a move to the right card. Actually, that's not quite true because technically Nico Minoru can do that. So actually almost delete that point. But she's the first card that has it printed as the default ability. There you go. Pros. She's fantastic value, of course. 1/1 is just fine, but the +2 and the ability to move and that flexibility that comes with it, all of that value that you get for just 1 energy is absolutely absurd. That's so filthy. Like, in terms of the net power is 3, which is already good. But of course, you're getting not only that +2, which will improve the other card, but also the movement factor of it. And the fact that some cards, or so many cards in the game, double in power. So you can double the 2. Especially Human Torch. Human Torch benefits from the +2, doubling that +2, but also moving, so benefiting almost quadruple off of it, if you know what I mean. It's crazy. She is another cheap move enabler with the bonus of being able to set up future play. So she joins the ranks of these extremely cheap move enablers, Ghost Spider and Iron Fist. So absolutely crazy. I guess Nico Minori is sort of in there as well. So that's really cool. So many cheap enablers. That's really good. They're going to work really nicely together and enable you to have these huge pop-off turns. I mean, you could, on the final turn, you could actually have played Araña down earlier. You can play Iron Fist, Vulture. Actually, hang on. Can you do this? Can you do Iron Fist, activate Araña, Vulture becomes a 15, Ghost Spider, Vulture becomes like a 21. I think you can. That's crazy. And it just offers loads of strategic opportunity, I should say. Some of the cons. She is fragile, and she's got low power herself. So she is susceptible to Killmonger, I should say. And also, it's going to feel really bad if they Killmonger her before you're able to activate the ability. So that's bad. She generally has a higher skill requirement than the average card, so probably less so a card for beginners. Of course, everyone has to start somewhere, and I'm not saying that beginners can't play the card, but she definitely has a high skill ceiling. Being able to play her down and set up plays, I mean, you saw me trying to figure out that Vulture play a minute ago. She's going to offer that strategic opportunity in so many games. So it's going to be she's going to be a harder one to play and to think about, and so one for high skill players. And she is a poor final turn top deck. The ability itself is obviously unusable. This is the downside of Activate. Activate is such a strong ability in the game because it allows you to do it any time. And so the downside of that is if you top deck those Activate cards, or you play those Activate cards on turn 6, you can't benefit from their ability. Also, one final little word, I suppose pros really. There's a lot of very strong locations for Araña, like cloning vats is going to be so crazy for Araña in a move deck. Just stick all of your Arañas down on cloning vats and then just worry about the other locations. So counters. Again, I want to talk about a card that isn't out yet, but it's such a big counter to move in general that I want to mention it, and that's Scream. Scream steals 2 power from one of your opponent's cards when they move once per turn. So she scales for 4, which is crazy. She's a 2/2. She's going to be such a massive hamper on move decks, and she's really going to keep cards like Araña in check. You've also got Red Guardian. Red Guardian, one of the only ways to actually remove the abilities from an Activate card, so Red Guardian's certainly going to ruin Araña's day. The thing is, they're using a 3 power card to counter... Sorry, they're using a 3 cost card to counter a 1 cost card. So, you know, if they've had to spend that much energy to really take away that factor, it's something that you have to... You have to basically weigh that up in your mind. Do you actually mind? Now, the times that you will mind is when they do it on the final turn of the game and your Activate doesn't work. But, yeah. And Killmonger. We've spoken about Killmonger. He will just straight up kill Araña and stop the ability in total. So let's talk about the key synergies and some deck ideas that I've got for you. Key synergies, we've spoken about already most of these. Human Torch, Dagger, Vulture. This is like the usual suspects. All of the move cards. Also Heimdall. Don't forget, you can Heimdall to the left on the final turn. And then after you've played Heimdall, you can then activate Araña. And she's going to move something back. In fact, the way I've just described that makes it sound like she could move anything. Actually, in that scenario, she could move Heimdall back, because Heimdall's the last one that you play. But you could do it before you Heimdall, so kick something back to the right, and then maybe you Heimdall and you get this extra benefit, and they don't... Basically, maybe they're anticipating Heimdall, and they know where all the cards are going to go, but you're actually going to kick one back out of sync. So, again, it's this complex strategy, very high skill card, and hard to really think about what we're going to do with it. But a few cards that I've not spoken about yet. is Nimrod and Daken, Wolverine's boy. Yeah, so these cards that double in power or duplicate themselves when you can trigger certain abilities. I think that's going to be another crucial thing with Araña. Maybe outside of move decks, that's where she can actually work. Even cards like Black Panther might be very cool. So that's cool. I mean, just in general, the fact that she gives +2 power, that's so strong and so powerful in itself. Look at Deadpool. This is a great way to scale Deadpool. The old Forge used to be a 1 energy, give 2 power, and that used to be extremely strong with Deadpool. So maybe Araña even fits in Destroy decks. Who knows? So the first deck I've got for you is Pump Move. The idea with this deck is that you've got quite a lot of cards that can grow in power. So you've got Human Torch, you've got Araña who gives power, you've got Dagger, Craven, Vulture, and to benefit off of all of those cards that you've got extra power on, you've got Gilgamesh in here as a big card, and you could do Gilgamesh alongside Miles Morales Spider-Man on the final turn, or maybe you could just do the Heimdall because you've got cards that benefit so greatly from moving, like Dagger and Vulture and Human Torch. So there's lots of nice little lines that you can do with this deck, and I think the Gilgamesh might be a bit of a surprising one. That they might be anticipating the Gilgamesh, they might be anticipating the Heimdall. But you do this really surprising play of Gilgamesh and Miles Morales Spider-Man. Like you've set up this massive board that looks like you've got Dagger with even low power. That's the crucial part to this little trick. If you've got a Dagger on low power, they will always go, well, they're Heimdalling. Don't move. Wherever they think Dagger's going to go, put a little bit of power in there, but they're going to abandon that location, and you just whack the Gilgamesh and the Miles Morales in a location that they thought they were going to have. And of course, often when they think you're going to Heimdall, they'll also think that you're not going to have much power on the right location, so bear that in mind as well. It's a very interesting, very crucial one, guys. So they might basically play something small in the right location, but you just didn't move the stuff, so you still just win. Think about that. It's a very tricky and cool deck. The next one I've got is M-Dubs. This is a very interesting and curious deck. Bit of a bouncy move style deck. And the reason I called it M-Dubs is because Moon Girl and Dubs, Moon Girl duplicates cards. So what you want to do is duplicate your cards like maybe Araña, like maybe Human Torch. You've got bounce cards in here like Beast, and you've got Black Swan to make use of all of these cheap 1-cost cards on the final turn, but also do crazy things like your duplicated cards, and maybe you could even do like, you've got all of these free 1-cost cards. You could do double Vulture. You could do like Iron Fist Vulture, Vulture Ghost Spider, and then you've got these 9 power cards, and you've also played those 2 power cards out. So like that's actually quite a lot of power to dump out. You've got Cosmo in here as well, because if you saw my Snapple Pass for the Madam Web video, one of the things I spoke about is this trick that you can do with Madam Web and Cosmo, and have this movable dog that can shut down strategies and stuff. So I think that's going to be really cool and interesting. And I just think this is a really interesting, weird and odd deck. So yeah, that's why I really like it. And then finally, I've got Destroy DeLoreans. This is like an evolved version of the Phoenix Force deck. We have got the classic Phoenix Force cards in here, like Nimrod and Phoenix Force, and of course Ghost Spider. But we haven't got Shuri, you will note, in here. No, instead we will rely on the boosts that we can get from Araña and from Hulkbuster, those cheaper style of boosts. But if we don't get Nimrod, we don't care too much. We can do things like Human Torch and Multiple Man. Like, hell, you know what? Araña into Multiple Man, that's such a strong and powerful play that we don't mind doing that. We don't mind doing Nico move right into Dagger. So yeah, this is quite an unpredictable deck, quite a cool deck. And we've even got Arnim Zola in here. You know, we might solidify some of this extra power that we get from cards like Human Torch and munch it with Venom, and then we could do like an Arnim Zola. So it could be some interesting stuff there as well. Hell, you could probably fit Deadpool in this deck if you wanted to. I think I did actually have Deadpool in an earlier version of this deck, but I wanted to go slightly kookier with it. And the final thing I want to mention about this deck is, don't just kill Multiple Man to get the Phoenix Force back. There's other stuff you can do. You can destroy the Dagger and create the Dagger with Phoenix Force. Think about it. So, Araña, is she a snap or pass? Of course she's a snap. I think I'll give it a 4.5. I think that's about right. I do think she's incredible, because whilst we've primarily spoken about move in this video, I really would say, guys, do try her out in more than just move. The ability to get the +2 and the unpredictability of moving cards can be so beneficial. There are so many locations that benefit from being moved into. So that could be either places like Carmartage where they... Is it Carmartage? No, Kunlun. Which is the one where you get +2 for moving into it. That one. So you've got locations like that, which obviously benefit from moving into it. So that's cool. But also, like, destroy locations where you can't play there. Difficult locations to get into, like Sanctum Sanctorum. So you've got all that side of it. And just the +2. The 1 energy +2. It's just very strong. So consider it. I think she's really, really good. And I think she's... Yes, she's going to be amazing in move. But I think she's going to be a fascinating card to experiment with. Very high strategy, very high fun. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're new, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.